Japan on Film podcast. I am your host, Perry Constantine, and welcome to a new season of the show. And for those of you who are watching on YouTube, welcome to the show. My name is, as I said, my name is Perry Constantine. I'm an author and a teacher living in Japan, originally from Chicago, and I've been hosting this show for a little over a year now. And every week, every 2 weeks or so, I bring you a new episode with a new Japanese movie, and I bring on a guest to come on and talk about it. And with that, I'd like to welcome my first guest, my first video guest, and that is a personal friend of mine here in Kagoshima as well, and that is Ashley Stockdale. Ashley, how are you doing today?
I am good. How are you, Perry?
I'm doing pretty good. Okay, so what I'd like to do first, before we jump into today's movie, is just give the people a chance to get to know you a little bit. So tell us a little bit about yourself, how you ended up coming to Japan, where you're from, all that fun stuff.
All right. Well, I'm originally from the Yukon, which is very, very far in the northwest of Canada, and from a very, very small town called Whitehorse. It's the biggest city in the area, but by international standards, very tiny. Which is why it always surprises me when people say Kagoshima is countryside.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So how did you end up? Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to say, how did you end up coming to Japan?
Well, I majored in theater in university and took a long time to do that. I switched my major often and finally settled on theater and did it very slowly. And then when I graduated, I had neither the ambition, the drive, nor the confidence to become an actor. Mm-hmm. So a friend of mine got a job teaching English in Korea. Mm-hmm. So I said, okay, I'm going to come. And the rest is history, as they say. So I've been teaching English for about 25 years now almost.
Okay. So you started in Korea and then made the jump over to Japan?
Yeah, well, I went to Korea for 2.5 years, and then I went back to Canada for a couple of years. And, you know, teaching English, unfortunately, in your home country is not a lucrative market.
Yeah,
so
I know that.
In order to make some money, I decided to make the jump back to Asia, and I had met somebody who inspired me to choose Japan. So
okay. Did you originally choose Kagoshima, or were you somewhere else first?
I did, because my wife now is from here. So originally from Tanegashima, actually, but moved to Kagoshima as a teen. And then I had met her in Canada as a student, and, you know, nothing untoward. She was just a student. And then we did that kind of junior high school thing of, I kind of like her. I should ask her friends if she likes me, and that kind of thing. And it turned out we were both interested. So that kind of gave me the inspiration to come to Japan. And she met me at the airport in Osaka, and I've been in Kagoshima ever since.
Okay, yeah. So both you and I, we both teach at the university, and we know each other from IBS, where we first met, which is where I actually teach the Japanese film class, which actually led to the start of this show. Now, about Japanese movies, did you have an interest in Japanese movies or culture before you came here, or did that develop kind of after?
Well, I don't know. I mean, I was thinking about it because I know this is a question you often ask or always ask. So I'm thinking about the history of me and Japanese entertainment or film or in general. Going back, I would say the early days, my first exposure to Japanese film would have been the Godzilla movies on TV on Sunday afternoons, which were maybe sent there to be a joke for us. Cheap content and laughing at the bad dubbing and all of that, and the cardboard cities. And then I was a huge fan of Battle of the Planets when I was in 3rd grade.
Gatchaman, right?
Running home I remember running home every day to watch that on TV. And then I would say the first actual Japanese movie that I sought out to watch would have been Akira.
Okay.
Way back in the day when it was kind of getting a lot of buzz as being a very groundbreaking animation and, you know, the new...
Right, so that was like late 80s, early 90s.
Sure. And honestly, I didn't get it. I didn't understand it at all.
Yeah, Akira is one of those movies that I kind of have the same feeling. Like, it is... I think a big part of the reason people have such a view of that is because it was just so different from what we in the West had come to expect from animation.
Yeah. I mean, we were very much Disney or Looney Tunes or whatever.
Right.
So
yeah. Okay. And now this movie, you chose this movie, and in fact, back when I started the show, you actually recommended this movie to me privately, saying, "Oh, you should do Fish Story sometime." And so I obviously I picked up the movie, which is why it was on the list. And so when you told me you wanted to come on and talk about it, I thought, okay, this is a good chance to finally sit down and watch it. So how did you come to this movie?
Honestly, I wouldn't be able to trace it exactly. I mean, when I first came to Japan, I kind of started looking around to see if there was opportunities to find Japanese movies. And as you know, it can be very, very difficult to find Japanese movies in Japan with English subtitles.
That was exactly that was my thought when I first came here, because I was interested in Japanese movies in the West, and when I came over here, I thought, oh, this is gonna be great. I can get my hands on all these Japanese movies that I can't get access to back in Chicago. And then I get over here and I find out that none of them have English subtitles.
Yeah, well, I think even when I came in 2001. So even that was, to me, almost seems like early days of the internet.
Yeah.
You know, and being able to find things online. So I think it was not until maybe the late 2000s that I started trying to kind of seek things out through various means, and kind of stumbled across this one. Maybe not that long after it came out, I think, because this was released in 2009. Is that right?
Just double checking here on the website. Yes, 2009.
Have we even said which movie we're talking about yet?
I think I mentioned it, but yeah, we're talking about Fish Story, which is a 2009 movie directed by Yoshihiro Nakamura. And yeah, so this is the first. There we go. Ashley is nice enough to put up a green screen for us today. So what was your reaction when you first saw this movie?
Well, I mean, I stumbled across it. You know, as I say, I was looking for interesting Japanese movies. I'd heard nothing about it, and I just kind of read a synopsis somewhere, and then found it, and I watched it, and. Yeah, I was pleasantly surprised because I had zero expectations going in, and it kind of surprised me all the way along. I mean, I've watched a lot of Japanese movies in the past, and honestly, some of them I find difficult to catch my attention. I remember when going back a little bit, when I decided to come to Japan, I went to the local video store in my neighborhood, and they had a few Japanese films. So I ended up watching things like Black Rain, for example.
Right, yeah.
Film. I watched Koreeda's Maburoshi, which I found, it's good, I guess, but they're very, very slow.
Yeah, his movies don't really have a lot in terms of story. It's mostly just about the character relationships, I found.
Yeah, so the thing I liked about this movie, Fish Story, is that it kind of does have a story.
Yeah.
And it takes a while to get going, and it takes a while to kind of see how it all fits together, but when it does fit together, to me it's a very satisfying conclusion.
I had the same reaction. It's funny when I read the premise, right? Because so for anyone who has never seen this movie before, doesn't know what it's about, it's basically about this punk band. About a year before the Sex Pistols, they tried to record this song. They tried to record an album, and the producers had no faith in it. They said that the album's not going to sell. And so they come up with this song called Fish Story, based on a book that the producer had handed over to the songwriter.
Yeah.
And it kind of jumps around in time, and it jumps around a lot, which is really interesting way of doing it. So there's segments in 1975, there's segments in the 1980s, more in the modern day as well, like the early 2000s.
Yeah, and I mean each segment is it's almost like a different genre, each segment.
Yeah, I thought so too. And from the premise, it says the premise is that this band makes a song that will save the world. So I actually got kind of just from the premise alone, I got a Bill and Ted vibe from it.
Right, that too. I felt that as well. Yeah.
But then actually watching it, I'm like, oh wow, this is nothing like Bill and Ted at all. So it was interesting how they took that premise and went somewhere very different with it. But you're right. It's sorry, go ahead.
I first watched it about 10 years ago, and then I had kind of put it into my, brain catalog as one of my favorite films, or Japanese films. And then, so this was the first time I've watched it in about 10 years, and I realized that I had forgotten most of it. So I was pleasantly surprised.
It's very easy to do just because of all the different stories going on in the movie.
Sure.
Yeah, so it's very easy to forget how parts of it. And you're right, it's like each one's like this different genre, which I thought the most interesting one was with the baker on the ferry, where he ends up being played by Mirai Moriyama, and he ends up being a martial arts master who stops a terrorist trying to take over a ferry, which never heard of that ever happening in Japan.
Yeah, well, it's a very sudden action movie in the middle of this very quiet, seems like a human drama.
Yeah, and that I was actually very impressed with the fight choreography in that scene. They did a really good job for, for a movie like this, you wouldn't expect the director to have any sort of knowledge or expertise in shooting a fight, but he does a really good job of that.
Right. Now, do you know much about the director? Did he do much before this?
I don't know. I'm looking him up right now. He's done a lot of movies.
Well, yeah, I think.
He did. He did the Snow White murder case.
Oh, right. Yes, I saw you covered that.
Yeah, we covered that one back when it was just when I was just doing the episode solo. But yeah,
was that a cinema film?
I believe it was actually made for TV.
Okay, because I was looking around and seeing, and I found it, I think, on Netflix, but of course without Japanese subtitles.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it was originally like a made for TV movie or something. Right. I can't remember, but I had actually found it on Staya and we rented it there. Okay. One of the nice things is my wife will go to the video store, and she'll be like, "Oh, have you ever seen this movie? Have you ever seen this movie?" So I actually get exposed to a lot of stuff just because of her.
And then how do you deal with the subtitle issue?
Well, I get the subtitles from a website called Open Subtitles, and so I download the subtitles from there.
And you can find almost anything on there.
Almost anything. There's some stuff that I haven't been able to find, but a lot of stuff is on there. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
What's the quality? Good?
Mostly good. There are a few where the quality of the subtitles is a little bit iffy, or that you have to alter the start and stop times.
I watched Death Note with a fan sub, and I think the person who subtitled it obviously didn't really understand the concept of subtitling, because there were long sections where somebody would be yelling something at somebody very, very quickly, and they would translate everything. So there'd be a paragraph on the screen for 1 second.
Yeah. No, these are mostly subtitles that are taken from other versions of the movie, versions that were released in the US or the UK or Hong Kong. Actually, is a lot of subtitled stuff.
Right.
But yeah, usually that's where they get most of the subtitles, and they're all ranked, right? The people vote on them. So if it's from a trusted source, a user that's has a history of uploading good quality subtitles, then it'll be trusted source. So yeah, that's a good way to weed some of the stuff out. Although some of the more obscure movies, you don't have a lot of luck with those.
Sure. Yeah, well, that's why I wondered about a movie like Fish Story. Is this an obscure movie?
I don't know if it's an obscure movie. I mean, it did get some premieres overseas. It got
Yeah, well, there were a few reviews online from international sources.
Yeah, and
I found one in The Guardian, for example.
I was just looking at that one myself, actually, just before we started recording. But it premiered at the New York Asian Film Festival in 2009, and it won the H.R. Geiger Award for Best Feature Film at I'm probably going to butcher this, but Neuchâtel International Fantastic Film Festival in Switzerland.
Okay. Yeah, well, I can't be sure how big any of these festivals are.
Yeah, but it did get some international attention.
It seems like, Nakamura's career post Fish Story has been, fairly big movies, it looks like. He did Kaibutsu-kun, which was a fairly big movie with one of the idols. Satoshi Ono was in that from Arashi. And then more recently, he looks like he's doing kind of Edo era epic comedy kind of things.
Yeah, there's this one that looks really curious, the 47 Ronin in Debt. So just that just that name alone makes me curious about that.
Yeah, and I think it stars Okamura, who's a very popular comedian. So
oh, okay.
He's I think he's doing a lot more big budget stuff these days.
Yeah, I'm just looking at some of the stuff. He also did one called Prophecy as well, which is a thriller based on a manga, it looks like.
Okay.
So yeah, it looks like he's gotten to do some bigger stuff since then.
Yeah, I'll say I looked at Fish Story. I was trying to find the box office for Fish Story to see if it was, had kind of made an impact at all in Japan, because on one of the posters that I found, there was a quote from Japan Today or something like the Japan Times, which is an English newspaper here, that said, the best film of the year or that kind of thing. But those kind of pull quotes, who knows?
Yeah, you're never quite sure where they're coming from.
The only box office I could find was that it made $12,000 in South Korea.
Oh, okay. And it actually has a lot of subtitles up on the subtitle site here, actually.
Okay.
So it looks like they had there are quite a few different versions of it that are out there. Well, there are two different English subtitle files.
Sure. It looks like on Box Office Mojo, this was around the same time as Avatar. So that obviously the foreign movies are the top of the box office usually, or animation.
Yeah.
So this kind of comes off to me more as an independent film, really.
More of the it's just more one of those the more quiet stuff, the things that, and I found this a lot, and I think I mentioned this on the show before. Like a lot of these movies, they end up finding an audience and becoming more popular overseas.
Sure.
In like America and Canada. And that's one of those things that surprised me when I first came over here. And I talked to Japanese people, tell them that they always ask the same question, why did you want to come to Japan?
Right.
And I tell them, well, I enjoyed Japanese movies in university, and so that made me have an interest in coming over here. And they'd say, oh, what kind of Japanese movies? And I rattle off a whole bunch of ones, and they look at me like I'm speaking a different language, because they've never heard of any of those movies.
It's a very strange thing. When I first came to Japan, maybe a year or two before, I had been teaching in Vancouver. And one of my Japanese students had, kind of introduced me to some Japanese cinema. And there happened to be Koreeda's Afterlife, Wonderful Life, was playing at one of the art house cinemas in Vancouver. And she said, oh, this is really good. We need to go. So I went with her and another teacher, and I was really blown away by it, really, because I think it is a fantastic movie.
Yeah.
And then I was particularly impressed by Susumu Terajima. And then later I watched Sonatine and Hanabi, the Kitano movies, and Terajima's there again. So it seemed to me that, Terajima's a big star over here.
Oh, yeah.
And he is a big star over here. The guy's got 300 credits or something, and literally every drama season you can find him on one or two shows. When I came to Japan and I said my favorite Japanese actor is Susumu Terajima, nobody had a clue who I was talking about. Yeah.
I had the same thing when I'm telling people that, oh yeah, Takashi Miike is my favorite director, and they just like, who?
Yeah, Miike's somebody I gotta try to get into. I noticed Ichi the Killer is on Netflix with English subtitles.
Oh, that's a trip. That movie's a trip.
Well, I've been avoiding Audition for such a long time because I'm kind of scared of the torture aspects.
Okay, so you're gonna Audition has here's a fair warning then. Audition does have a pretty brutal torture scene, but Ichi the Killer is like, the entire runtime is nothing but blood and gore. So just giving you fair warning there.
Is it fun gore?
It's both. It does this interesting thing where it transitions between like over the top, almost cartoonish gore, and then torture scenes that are really difficult to watch. So it kind of makes you laugh at one torture scene, and then it kind of punishes you for laughing at it in the next torture scene. So it's a really interesting way that he did that.
I was interested by this because the Nao Omori, is that his name? The guy who plays the manager in Fish Story, Okazaki.
Yeah.
He is Ichi the Killer.
Oh, really? I didn't even realize that. Oh, wow.
Yeah. So I had no idea. I was kind of confused because to me, when I see the poster of Ichi the Killer, I think that Tadanobu Asano is Ichi the Killer.
Right. Yeah,
He's
I thought
not.
the same thing when I saw the preview and found out later that it was actually the other guy who was Ichi. But yeah, it's an interesting movie. In fact, I'm hoping to get to that at some point on the show. Another past host has talked about possibly coming on to do that, so we're just trying to find time to see when I can get him on to talk about that.
Yeah, I'm just a bit scared of the torture thing because I saw I mean, going back to Miike, he had a cameo in Hostel.
Right, yeah.
Which is who's the director of that?
That was Eli Roth.
Yeah, and I just found that so horrifying and grotesque. I just couldn't bring myself
not as
to watch.
So the thing about Audition is the torture's not as graphic.
Yeah.
But the way he films it, like, it feels painful. Right? It's like, watching someone, break a fingernail or something, like that kind of it's like that kind of like uncomfortable feeling.
The one that gets me the most is hand cutting. So
yeah.
People grab for knives and pull their hands on the blade. It's just like, oh my god.
So yeah, going back to this movie. What were some of your thoughts rewatching it again this second time? Anything that kind of jumped out to you in particular?
Well, I mean, as I say, I like how the way it all fits together as a puzzle and how I was kind of pleasantly surprised. And, I get grabbed right away from the very first opening shots, where we see, well, first of all, it opens with the kind of Go Rangers TV show.
Yeah.
And then it goes to, we see this guy in his like motorized wheelchair or motorized scooter, kind of cruising down in a deserted shopping arcade. So already my interest is piqued because I'm kind of a fan of the post-apocalyptic genre. And then he drives down the little alleyway and makes a point of stopping to push over some bicycles with his cane.
Yeah.
It's just like, it just kind of really drew me in right away. And then as he comes out, we see the comet, above his head. And then we go, okay, here's what's going on. And then a record store happens to be open, which is the weirdest thing,
Yeah.
So just the whole kind of setup of it and him going into the record store and then meeting the I don't know what you'd call him. You'd call him a hipster nowadays, maybe, but
maybe, yeah.
The record shop owner, and then the fan who's there kind of looking for new music. And this old guy is just incredulous. And also, I was kind of, does the old guy, they call him the old man in a lot of the credits and stuff, but he's not very old. He has a cane, but he does not seem to use it at all.
Right, yeah.
He uses it to hit stuff and hit people, but never to help his walking. So
yeah, but he doesn't.
That's another character quirk that I find very odd.
In fact, I don't
and
even
then the
see
whole,
him...
opening sequence where they start talking about the premise that a comet is coming and it's, it's 5 hours away and we've got 5 hours to live.
I thought what's funny about that is they referenced the movie Armageddon.
Yes. Even going as far as saying maybe Bruce Willis is still on the comet.
Yeah, and they said that this other team of people from the U.S. went to it and set the bombs, but it didn't work or something like that.
Now, I noticed, I was kind of curious. I don't know if you know anything about it or if there is some significance to Japanese culture, but it was all like 555.
No, I didn't even...
5 heroes, 5 hours until the comet hits. The comet is 5 kilometers wide.
I don't know if there's any cultural significance behind it, but I think maybe it's just calling back references. Maybe it's just like another one of those connective things that happens throughout.
It's just plus the 5 heroes.
Yeah. Plus they recorded the song in 1975 as well.
Right, and also the band, including the manager, is 5 people.
Exactly. Yeah. So I think it's just trying to draw that. Just trying to draw that connection. As well,
and this time, when I watched it again, I had forgotten who the 5 heroes were. So as I was watching the movie, I was again, as I probably did the first time, was like, okay, this guy might be one of the heroes. This guy might be one of the heroes. This guy might be one of the heroes. And it turns out, of course, that's not the case.
Right. Yeah.
So,
and especially,
what are we doing with spoilers here?
No, we're fine. Don't worry. We can go. Most people, I think, going in, they kind of assume that they're going to get spoiled in this.
Well, see, I wouldn't listen. I'd watch the movie first before I listen to a podcast like this.
Hopefully, but sometimes the spoilers help people get interested in checking it out, too.
Well, true. I mean, I've listened to probably most of your catalog now of this show, and a lot of them I haven't watched. I find it difficult, in fact, to... I still haven't been able to watch a samurai film.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I just find them so slow.
Yeah, some of them are. Yeah, some of them definitely
Mind you, though, A Throne of Blood, I think I'm interested in because I was a theater student in school. You know, I majored in theater, and Macbeth is my favorite Shakespeare play. So.
Okay, then yeah, I think you'll definitely enjoy that one then. But yeah, I'm trying to think. One of the things I thought was really interesting is just the whole idea of punk rock being used to save the world and how it was kind of, they came before the Sex Pistols.
Yeah, right. Well, they really pushed that agenda forward, didn't they? They mentioned it several times that this was a year before punk rock, a year before punk rock.
Yeah. So trying to steal punk rock away from the Sex Pistols.
Yeah. Now, you've said on several of your podcasts that you're not a big music guy.
No, not really.
Right? So what did you think about the song?
I didn't really. It sounded good enough. I mean, I used to be a punk fan when I was back in my high school, college days. Yeah, and I still like some of it, still to this day. So I thought it was from what I wasn't paying too much attention to the song, but it sounded catchy enough, basically.
Right. Yeah, I mean, when I watched the movie the first time, I enjoyed the song, but I didn't really know anything about the artist, Kazuyoshi Saito. But later on, he had a kind of a big hit, I don't know how long ago, 6 or 7 years ago, with Yarashiku Naritai, which was a big kind of retro style video that got a lot of play on all the music video channels.
Oh, okay.
And because of that, I got very interested in his music. And then I realized that he was the guy who wrote the song for Fish Story.
Oh, okay.
And also his another one of his songs, Summer Days, closes out the film during the end credits as well.
Oh, okay. Yeah, it's a good song. It's but it didn't hit me like in the same way that, say, the music in Linda 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 or the music in Your Name. Like after I watched those movies, I wanted to download those songs. This one I didn't really have that same kind of urge.
Yeah, sure, I can see that.
But it was a good enough song. And I do like how the whole premise behind it is that this song is based on a novel that was just completely mistranslated.
Yeah, well, that's kind of the funniest moment of the whole film, I think.
Yeah.
As an English teacher.
I thought that was...
They sit down in the bar and Okazaki explains that, they're all worried. Well, can we use this title? It's going to be a copyright issue. And he's like, no, don't worry. They only made one copy of this book.
Yeah.
Because a guy lied and said he was a translator and then just translated it word for word.
Yeah.
Which is something I encounter a lot teaching at the university level.
Yes, yeah, definitely. But I did think that was funny, is that this whole idea of this nonsensical song.
Yeah.
And it's kind of funny that when you compare that to punk rock, because as a friend of mine had once said that punk rock is basically just, simple music and a fun show. And like a lot of the ethos of punk is like, rebellion and all that. There's a really good movie that came out a long time, maybe like 20 years ago now, called SLC Punk. I'm not sure if you've heard of it.
No.
It was with Matthew Lillard was in it.
Okay.
And it's a really good, like, small independent movie about these punk rock fans living in Salt Lake City back in the 80s.
Okay.
And it's all about how, Matthew Lillard's character, he thinks like, oh, I'm punk. I'm outside of the establishment. I'm a rebel. I do things my own way. And then he meets this girl at the end of the movie, and she's asking him about like his clothing and all that. And she says, she's like, you know what, she's like, you talk about rebellion and all that, but you look like you're wearing a uniform.
Yes, sure.
And so I did think that. So it's kind of like that. The whole notion of punk kind of being the antithesis of itself in some way.
Yeah, well, that's the problem with punk, I guess. As soon as it gets a little bit of attention, it's not punk anymore, is it?
Right. Yeah. So I did think that was kind of funny in that, and that I think they're kind of making a subtle commentary about that with this being a nonsensical song that ends up then changing the world, saving the world.
Now, what about the band name? I noticed that they mentioned it twice. There was a misreading of the kanji characters.
Yeah. I noticed that too.
Gyakurin.
Yeah, Gyakurin or Gekirin is their original name.
And then I asked my wife about it, and she said that it couldn't be read Gekirin.
Oh, okay.
But my 12-year-old daughter said, yes, it can.
Oh, okay. That's interesting.
So I don't know if this is just my wife not being, so close to her own education anymore, as a lot of Japanese people do. They kind of lose their kanji ability once they get out of school.
Yeah.
Because their smartphones do everything for them, or their computers do everything for them.
Yeah.
I just wondered if there was any significance to that, but I couldn't really find anything about it. Apparently, Gyakurin means opposite.
Okay.
But Gekirin means wrath or anger,
Oh, okay. That's interesting. So I maybe that's I'm looking up the Japanese version of the Wikipedia, see if there's anything.
I just wondered if it was significant because they did mention it twice, I think. But then I don't know, seemed to be a few things that they kind of introduced and then didn't really follow up on too much.
Yeah, I see what you mean. Yeah, the first character, it can be, so when the two characters are combined, then it means superior anger.
Okay.
When it's the first character, it means like opposite.
Okay.
And then the second character means, this is funny, scale of a fish.
Okay. Oh. Fish scale, really?
Yeah. Of a fish or a snake. Uroko.
Yeah, I wonder if it's significant.
I think that's not done. I think that is definitely done on purpose.
Okay.
Because it would
I have trouble. I mean, I'm not a film analysis guy by any means. I just enjoy movies, and I took a film analysis class once in university and hated it because it was all about the phallic symbols everywhere.
Right. But this is so I'm looking at the different translations of when the two characters are combined together, it means like superior anger, and then the first character means like opposite. But if you read them separately, it's opposite scale.
Yeah.
So like I guess you could probably read that as the fact that the translator thought it was a story about an actual fish.
Right.
And so maybe it's kind of like, this movie isn't what you think it's going to be. Maybe that's a way you can read it.
Yeah, well, it was the whole structure of the movie is very, it's really interesting to me. I was kind of surprised actually when I rewatched it that how long the section about the band actually turns out to be.
Yeah.
Because the first few segments, it's broken up into segments, as we said. Okay, so we get to the record store, and there's the discussion of the end of the world coming, and then it flips to 1982, and we've got these guys driving in their car, the kind of harried driver who's being bullied by the Don Johnson Miami Vice guy in the back.
I said the exact same thing when I was watching it last night with my wife. I'm like, this guy looks like he belongs in Miami Vice.
Yeah. And then, jumping to the ferry hijacking and all of that. And then the band, turns out to be like a 40-minute kind of short movie about the rise and fall of a punk band.
Yeah, I was really interested in that. Like, I actually found myself wanting to see more about the band. I thought
I really liked the band. I think the casting was really well done, and I think the Atsushi Ito, who plays the bass player and the leader, he's really good. Yeah. And I think that this, might have been one of Kengo Kora's first movies, the singer. And then he later went on to do Snakes and Earrings.
Right, yeah.
Where he's the split-tongue snake guy, I assume.
Okay.
And he was in Shin Godzilla, apparently, as some bureaucrat.
Oh, okay. That's probably where I recognized him from then. Because I was watching it, and I'm like, I know I've seen... Oh, he was also in Shoplifters.
Right. Okay. Yeah, I wasn't sure if he had a big part in that or not. I couldn't really find any images of him online, but
no, it says, I think he may have been. I think he may have been one of the cops at the end.
Okay.
I think.
I just think he has a really, really good look in this movie, and the charisma is kind of, really oozing off the screen. He makes a really great lead singer.
Yeah, I wanted to see. I would have liked to see more of the band, and that's not
Well, and I like the whole opening scene where we first see them actually, without being just in the studio, where they're playing in like a show lounge, some kind of thing for drunken salarymen.
Yeah,
and then everybody's booing and saying play some enka or whatever.
And then they start. I love that when they start playing it, and they just revert it to a punk version of it.
Sure. And then it ends up, they're they're fighting with the crowd. I kind of wondered if they were trying to imply that Gekirin, the band, had invented stage diving also.
Oh, okay. I didn't even think about that. That's a possibility.
Because they all take their turn to dive off the stage.
Yeah, I did like that. I thought that was an interesting scene, though, because you've got these, all these, drunken salarymen who are basically like the symbols of authority in Japan. Sure. And they're telling the band what to do, and the band's like, no, fuck you, and then they start fighting with them.
Right. Yeah, well, the movie, the general theme of the whole thing is kind of breaking out against what society's telling you to do.
Right,
really.
Yeah. And then ultimately that ends up saving the world. So I thought that was a nice little touch, especially because and that's also too something else I noticed is just the power of pop culture. I think a very strong theme in this movie, because you have these, they write this song and it goes nowhere, but then, they find it and, the Wallflower guy, he listens to it and it gives him the courage to stand up to when he sees the rapist.
Yeah.
And, he knocks him out. And then he and the girl end up getting married. They have a kid, and he starts training the kid to be a champion of justice.
Yeah, well, the whole conceit of the muted section of the song, I really like in this movie as well. So the story is that when the band is recording the song, Fish Story, which they have a producer who's a real ass and kind of trying to soften their sound, and they really fight for the Fish Story song. And then, there's the whole side story of Goro, the singer, being offered a solo career. And then I'm not sure whether he's decided to have a solo career or not. And I'm still not sure, honestly. But when they go to record the song, the producer gives them one take. You got one chance to do it. And so in the middle of the guitar solo, Goro goes off on this kind of rant about, is anybody listening? Is anybody going to hear this song? It's such a cool song. And then they decide they're going to take out that space, just a minute of blank space on the record, which everybody gives their own story to.
Yeah. Like they mentioned at one point that you could hear a woman screaming on it or something like that.
Right. Well, that's how the geeky guy, I don't know, they all have character names, but they never mention it. So the driver in the 1982 scene, he's kind of, a really wishy-washy, scared kind of guy. And this guy here. And then he's, they're trying to find scary tapes, which is this kind of, it's a thing in Japan, I think, of the kind of the summer horror.
Right,
kind of idea. And tunnel stories and that kind of thing, too. There's a lot of stories of scary highway tunnels and stuff like that in Japanese culture as well. So, they tell the story of you can hear a scream, and of course you can't. It's just blank space. But you wonder, can he really? Because he seems like he might have a sixth sense.
Right. They say that if you have a sixth sense, you can hear a scream. And that actually does connect with the woman he finds, about to be raped.
Well, yeah, he's driving away after he's had they go out for their little drinking party and he's still being picked on by Don Johnson. And then they meet that girl who's kind of a prophet or whatever, who says, you're going to meet a woman who is very important to you tonight. And I've met a man who's going to save the world. And then he's driving away really, really angry after the bully goes off with that girl. And as he's driving down the highway, the Fish Story cassette gets stuck in his cassette deck, and he can't get it out. And then it comes up to the blank part just before he gets to this tunnel. And he's sitting there really in a panic because it seems like he's afraid he's going to hear the scream.
Yeah.
And then we do hear a scream. And it's this kind of a bit of a shocking scene, honestly.
Yeah.
Where he comes across this young woman being assaulted in the darkness.
But yeah, this was a really fun movie, and also then he trains his son to be the in the credits he's only called Champion of Justice.
Yes.
I love that.
Yeah, I really like him too. He's a very charismatic actor as well.
I mean, he's really believable, and
yeah. Have you seen 20th Century Boys?
No, I haven't.
It's a manga. I think it was quite a popular manga, and it actually spawned 3 films. Okay. And Moriyama's in that as well, and he's got a really interesting, fun character. I would suggest checking those ones out as well. They're kind of interesting.
Oh, he was also in 1 Million Yen Girl.
Oh, yeah, right. I haven't heard that or seen it. As I was researching this, I found these kind of movies, but I don't know a lot about it. He was in another one called Rage, which sounds kind of interesting as well. Pretty dark.
Yeah, 1 Million Yen Girl. That was a pretty good movie. We watched that I think last year.
Right.
And he was also in the TV version of Waterboys.
Oh, okay, right. Yeah, because he's got that dancer's body, right? Apparently he trained as a dancer when he first came out, and then
that explains a lot about his why he's able to work so well in those fight scenes.
Yeah. There he is here. With his apple pie.
Yeah. And what's funny? When I first saw him, and then when he gets the his watch starts beeping.
Yeah.
Like I thought he was one of the terrorists too. Like he was working undercover with them or something.
Sure.
Oh, Rage. That was a Sangyo Lee movie. So he's the guy who directed the Japanese version of Unforgiven.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and
which one is that? Rage?
The same director, yeah. Same director as Rage, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, Rage sounds like sounds like a very dark movie. I read the synopsis of it, and it sounded very
yeah, I'll have to add that to the list as well. That looks oh, and Ken Watanabe's in that one too.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, definitely have to check that out at some point. Okay. And then also how it links up to the end with the girl being the one who has to save the world, and they call back the fact that she falls asleep anywhere.
Yes, which is, as you know, part of Japanese culture.
Yeah, except they have the ability to wake up right before their stop, which I remember one time I actually fell asleep on the bus going back home, and the bus then I wake up and the bus driver wakes me up, and it's the middle of the night, the last bus, and it's like the last stops, and I'm like 30 minute walk away from my house.
That only happened to me once. I went to a Thanksgiving dinner when I was living in Korea. We had a friend whose father was in the Coast Guard. So he had access to the military base and took us there for Thanksgiving dinner. So we ate a ton of, tryptophan in there?
Yeah.
And then woke up at the bus terminal with the driver trying to shake 4 foreigners awake. We had no idea where we were. What did you think of Mikako Tabe's performance in this?
I mean, she doesn't have a whole lot to do, right? All she really has to do is just, basically just kind of look in awe at the Champion of Justice. She doesn't really have much else to do in it.
Yeah, well, I know that, I read several reviews of this film as I was kind of getting reacquainted, and a lot of people mentioned that they just hated her. She was the worst part of the movie, and she took them out of it. But to me, in this movie, this is kind of the style of schoolgirl acting.
I was going to say the same thing. Yeah, maybe it's just because I've seen so many movies with, that have schoolgirl performances in it. So she didn't strike me as, being anything out of the ordinary. It just seemed like the normal kind of performance you'd expect from an actress playing a schoolgirl in a Japanese movie. Yeah.
And she's gone on, I think, to become a legit star.
Yeah, she's been in a lot of stuff. I'm looking at lots of TV. Looks like
I think one of her most famous roles is where she's a detective who has a better sense of smell than a dog.
Oh, okay. That's interesting.
I think it's the Denko one, maybe.
But she did, she did a serviceable job, I thought. I mean, there wasn't anything to write home about, but she did a decent job.
Yeah. She just didn't ruin the movie for me, and I think she was good for a little bit of some comic moments there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
and also,
sorry, go ahead.
She's crying, and then the champion of justice brings her a fruit tart.
Yeah.
And she's, oh, is this for me? And then, oh no, sorry, it's somebody else's order.
Yeah,
and then gives him the chance to tell his little story.
Right. Yeah. And then
which helps to kind of put the pieces together and give her the inspiration later. And that's also where we find out the kind of throwaway line that she's a science student.
Right. Yeah. Which then she ends up being the one who ends up saving the world, which I thought was also a nice touch, because the status of Japanese women in Japanese society, and then she ends up being the one who saves the world.
And falls asleep promptly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But did you kind of figure out how it all? Because I obviously this is the second time you're watching it, and you said you kind of forgot most of it. But did you kind of figure out how it all fit together before the big montage at the end?
No, honestly, I forgot it all. So I was very pleasantly surprised when it was explained. I kind of wondered, I mean, I wrote down this as a question to kind of ask you when we were talking about this. Did you think the montage was necessary at the end?
I think it's good, and that's kind of a style with these types of movies. Whenever they have like some sort of twist or something, they go back and they kind of do a montage and show all the events that link together.
Yeah, well, I think it kind of was nice, and it helped to kind of really seal the deal. With see the translation story, we see the aunt stealing a copy of the book, and Okazaki picking up the book and passing it on to Shigeki, and then we finally get to see what happens with a lot of the stories that were open.
Yeah,
we see, for example, when the geeky driver guy goes to save the girl in the previous part of the movie, we just see him running up with a stick, but we don't actually see what happens.
Right.
And it turns out that really he doesn't do the heavy lifting in that fight.
No, and then the girl ends up bashing the guy's head with the rock.
Sure. And then that becomes I was very surprised that was his son was the champion of justice.
Yeah. I had felt the same thing. So it's a little bit different, because the other movie where I really remember the montage like that was in Initiation Love, and in there it seemed kind of tacked on and like unnecessary. Okay. But here it actually made a lot of sense. I thought it worked really well to connect all those different threads together.
Yeah. Well, I had written that down as could it have been left out, but then I watched it again this morning, and I thought it's kind of necessary.
Yeah.
And it ties up some loose ends.
Yeah. I know I did read that as well. Some reviewers were saying that it's not necessary if you've been paying attention, but I still thought it was helpful, especially to see like the connection of, especially, the guy in the car and the champion of justice. Cause I'm not sure. I kind of had a inkling of that when he mentions, because we see him at the end of the world with that cult or whatever, and he mentions, I just want to see my son, right? And so I kind of picked up on that a little bit, but it was nice to have that confirmed.
Sure. Well, there were a couple of red herrings in there too that I kind of thought were good. For example, Okazaki's son. When the band is kind of celebrating their victory of finally getting to record the way they wanted to, and they're sitting in the pub and talking about the meaning of the book and how all that happened, and Okazaki's son is just kind of crying because he wants to watch Go Rangers.
Yeah.
And then eating his own rice. And at that point, I had totally forgotten, and I was like, oh yeah, right, the son, he's a champion of justice, or he's one of the heroes. And then it fades out, and he just is the record shop owner.
Yeah. But still, but that's a way where he passes on the story, and he passes on the song. So I thought that was kind of, but yeah, it is kind of funny how he doesn't end up really contributing anything except for just being there when the world's about to end.
Yeah, well, it's kind of a what is it, like a butterfly effect kind of situation?
Yeah.
Just the decision of this fake Japanese American guy to say he's a legit translator and translate this book.
Right. Yeah.
which leads on to this iconic, not even iconic song, this obscure song that a few people happen to listen to, which leads them into different paths. I just really like how that all ties together.
I did too, yeah. And like I said, I like that idea of the power of pop culture and how it can influence people to do things, because the guy only gets the courage to go save the girl because he listens to the song and it stops right at that moment. Yeah. So that, and yeah, the song is what, like, he's thinking of the song as he goes and he decides to do something about it.
Yeah.
So I thought that was nice. And then of course it ends up, so because of that, and what he experienced there, he trains his son to be stronger than he was.
Sure.
And then, his son doesn't end up saving the world himself, but he ends up saving the girl who ends up saving the world.
Right.
So yeah, I like that knockdown effect. And
yeah, I like the fact that the things you think are going to be what are the key points of the story are actually just a detail.
Right.
That leads to the main point.
Exactly. Yeah. Okay. Is there anything else you wanted to talk about, or anything you wanted to mention about this?
I was curious. Like, when I looked at the cast listing, I was kind of surprised about some of the order of the cast list. I mean, I studied theater, so I'm interested in kind of the acting side of things and also the business side of that. And in the credit order, Atsushi Ito gets the top billing.
Yeah.
He's the bass player, and he's, I think, little bit well known at this point.
Right. He was in the Train Man TV show by this point.
Right. And then the next person on the list is the drummer.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah.
Shibukawa. And he's apparently was just a model who became an actor.
Okay.
And I think he seems to work more now, but at this point in his career, he didn't seem to be a big star.
Oh, he was also in Ichi the Killer, and he was in Wasabi with what's his name? The guy from The Professional. John Reno.
Right. Yeah, and then the third billing is Noriko Eguchi, who plays the groupie who becomes like Shigeki's girlfriend.
Yeah.
And I don't understand why she's third bill. She doesn't really have much to do. I mean, she does have a very funny moment, a couple of funny moments when she's, smashes a guy over the head with a bottle to become the groupie. And then when
I think it's just I'm looking at her credits, and she's done a lot of work. So I think it's just that she's a well-known name.
Yeah.
Is why she's in there.
Yeah, I couldn't really figure it out, because it seems like you wouldn't really give them third bill. I would have put Kengo Kora higher up on the list, But
you see that sometimes in Western movies too, where a big actor who has a minor role gets like top billing, like in Superman the movie, Marlon Brando gets top billing in that movie.
Sure.
And then it's Gene Hackman, and Christopher Reeve is third.
Right. But Noriko Eguchi, is she Marlon Brando?
Well, maybe not Marlon Brando, but she is. Looks like she is a popular actress. She's done a lot of stuff, and especially at this time, because this came out in 2009. So yeah, she was. Yeah. She had done a ton of movies by this point.
Sure. Well, I noticed that. What's her name? The Haruko, the girl at the Gokon meeting or the drinking party. She is now on the Netflix series Ju-on Origins.
Oh, okay. Really? I didn't.
Which does have English subtitles.
So yeah. We watched that. Yeah, she was the woman in white. Oh, okay. That's a good series. We binged on that like when it came out.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
it is
really good. Yeah.
Yeah, well, the Ju-on is another one of those movies that I quite like. And Ring.
It's kind of like it's part prequel and part reboot.
Okay.
Because it is kind of like a different story, I think.
Right.
But it's set before the original movie. But yeah, it's a really good series. We really enjoyed it when we watched it.
Well, the trouble with watching these kinds of things is I'd want to watch it with my wife, but she's kind of she's not a very fast binger.
Oh yeah.
She'll watch an episode and then not watch another one for 2 weeks, which frustrates the hell out of me.
My wife does that. Well, she does that sometimes. And other times she will binge stuff. Like with Ju-on, we binge the whole thing in like one night.
Right. Well, see, my wife is also a little bit, what's the word? Not wary, but she's a little scared to watch Japanese horror movies because they're a little too close to home.
Okay. See, my wife she loves horror movies, so that's definitely not a problem.
My wife loves horror,
yeah,
but she loves to see like blonde American cheerleaders getting hacked to death and stuff.
No, my wife, she loves the ghost stories. Yeah. But it does hit close to home for her. Like, but she doesn't like the grotesque stuff. She doesn't like anything that's too bloody or anything like that.
Well,
but,
see, my wife loves the grotesque, which is why I'm kind of wondering if she's going to be into Ichi the Killer we watch this weekend.
Oh, that's got a lot of gore in it. I think if she likes gore, she'll like that movie.
Yeah. She likes body parts getting cut off.
Then yeah, she'll definitely like that movie. Yeah. Okay, so I don't think there's anything we kind of exhaust what we have to talk about with this movie. Ashley, do you have any final thoughts you wanted to say before we wrap up?
Not really. I mean, if you can track this movie down, check it out, because I think it's a worthy addition to the cinematic canon here in Japan. And as far as I know, it's not a really famous movie. As you were saying,
really. I don't think so.
Nobody knew who Susumu Terajima was from the other things we talked about. And then when I watched Fish Story, I loved it, and I mentioned it to all my students, and not a single one had heard of it.
Yeah, I've seen that happen a lot. One of my students actually asked me the other day because he's talking to his mother about the films we watch for class, and he's like, my mom had a question for you. I said, okay. He said she wanted to know how you know about these movies that even Japanese people don't know about.
Yeah, well, it's often the people who are visiting a place that are more interested in the things that are readily available, you know.
Well, yeah, the way I explained it to a coworker was they asked a similar question. I said, well, the reason is because in the West, we have all the big budget stuff. Like here in Japan, the stuff that's popular from overseas is the big budget stuff. And that's because they don't have any equivalent to that in Japan, really. Like the biggest budget Japanese movie would be a low budget movie in America.
Sure. Well, and also I think the stuff that gets seems to get the big attention here is the things that are based on television programs or, based on a manga.
Yeah.
Which is usually based on a manga first.
Right. And the types of people who would seek out, like, because these movies, like Ichi the Killer or Fish Story or what have you, the ones that get popular in the West, it's not like they're popular in the West because they've had these big theatrical releases, right? They're the purview of film fans who, are looking for something different.
Cult classics.
Right, exactly. Yeah. So that's why the movies that we know about when we're living in the West from Japan, when we come over and we talk to Japan, they're like, what are these movies? There's all this it's like direct to video, low budget, indie art house stuff here.
Yeah, I think the other ones that get attention here, like I said, it's the ones that are based on TV shows like Confidence Man JP or something like that. Or it's the ones that get a lot of international attention, like Shoplifters, and they instill that Japanese pride, which makes people want to go out and see them and kind of wave the small flag they're allowed to wave,
Right. Yeah. I think that's definitely a good point. Okay, Ashley, thanks so much for coming on the show. Hopefully we'll have you on again at some time.
That would be great.
Okay, thanks for listening, and that does it for this episode of Japan on Film. Come back next time, and I'm not sure what we have coming up next, but yeah, it should be something good. Thanks for listening, and we'll talk to you next time. Thanks for watching this episode of Japan on Film. For more of our videos, just hit the subscribe button.